Okay, welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us for another webinar this evening. And I'll say I'm especially grateful for the people that show up for the webinars when it's bright and sunny out, and you could be getting some ice cream and going for a walk. So you guys are the real ones. I appreciate you guys showing up. And if you're watching the recording, I appreciate that too. Thanks for coming. So uh, we're diving into this topic today, that's electric water heating. And as Toronto Home Energy Network, we talk a lot about heat pumps, and people are asking us, oh, what about heat pump water heaters? My gas water heater is getting really old. It's time to replace it. But there's some uncertainty when people are switching to electric. How's it going to change their bills? When the family's over for Christmas, are we going to run out of hot water? So we were getting a lot of these questions, so we're really happy when Casper said, yes, let's do a webinar on electric water heating. Let's get into the nuts and bolts and hopefully increase your confidence in the electric options out there so you can make that switch when it's the right time and make your house a little bit more energy efficient and sustainable as well. So as you're entering in here, feel free to say a little hello in the chat. Let us know if you're in Toronto, which neighborhood you're calling in from. It's nice to have you here. It's nice to see who we're reaching and where. And if you're not in Toronto, let us know where you're calling in from as well. That's always much appreciated. And before we really dive into the specifics of Casper's presentation and my presentation, I always start with land acknowledgement. And if you've come to our webinars before, you know that there's kind of I do this in two parts. There's the retrospective one, the more standard and traditional land acknowledgement that you've likely heard before. And then I do a forward-looking, kind of contemporary, what's an issue that we're dealing with right now, and how can we practice reconciliation from wherever we are today. Sometimes that's advocacy, sometimes that's supporting an Indigenous artist. So we'll get into that in a second. So the standard one, we're on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And Toronto's now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people as well. And the city acknowledges that Toronto's covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. So that's the standard one. Moving on to the forward-looking one. Of course, it's been in the news a lot. Wildfires are really hitting northern Indigenous communities, especially hard right now. And this image that I came across on CBC really put that in perspective for me more than photos of plumes of smoke or, reports about how bad the air quality has been. This is a photo of Indigenous people evacuating their village on Air Force transports, not knowing if they're going to have somewhere to come back to, right? So that's what people are dealing with right now in Ontario. So I went down and tried to find a charity that was doing some relief and some support for people that are affected by these wildfires. And so I was able to find the Anishinaabe Nation Seven Generation Charity, and they're on Canada Helps right now. So I pulled up their page, and there's some really generous donations going through to their charity to help with wildfire relief there. So in a second, I'll throw that into the chat, and hopefully we can raise some money for the people affected by wildfires today. That would be a nice outcome of this webinar, beside learning about electric water heating. So that's us getting into our agenda. I'm just doing this housekeeping stuff now. I'm going to hand it over to Casper first, and Casper is going to get into the nuts and bolts. He's our headliner tonight. He's really going to tell us what we would. Yeah, I've made him laugh. We're going to get into the nuts and bolts of the cost and capacity, your options, how to read a spec sheet, how to know if a system is right for your home and right for your habits, and how you're going to use it. And so we're excited to hear from him. I'll tell you a little bit more about Casper's background in a second. I'm Nathan. I'm going to come in after that. And I've just been collecting some words of wisdom, some words of advice from people that have already made the switch to electric hot water heating. And since they've gone down that road, they usually have this is what I would have done differently tidbit to share. Or if I hope someone else does it like this. So that section will get a little bit more into, specific house types as well as just some general best practices. And so hopefully you'll have a nice takeaway from that. And from that, we'll finish with our Q&A. And I always end the recording. So we are recording right now. It goes up on our YouTube page tomorrow. That's the Toronto Home Energy Network on YouTube. And I include a handout with the links that we've talked about today, so you can just sit back and relax. You don't have to worry about missing anything. I send that out to all registrants the next day. And if you're watching the recording, it's in the description as well. Cool. So that's all there. And I'll move on to a little brief introduction of Kasper. So again, thank you for joining us, Kasper. Just really appreciate it. So Kasper works for Windfall Ecology Centre up in Aurora. They serve Durham region. And Kasper has completed hundreds of EnerGuide evaluations. So he's been in and out talking about many, many different things, and water heating is one of those things where he's developed a bit of a working knowledge of. So we're really excited to pick his brain here tonight. So he's been working across the GTA for a number of years now. So, and Kasper and I have been emailing and talking a lot, so it's great to finally have him appear on a webinar. And my name's Nathan. I do the marketing for Toronto Home Energy Network. I'm also the homeowner journey manager. So that just means trying to, as you're on this journey for a more sustainable and energy efficient home, or you're replacing aging equipment or whatever brings you here today, I hope I can help you find the right resources and the right people to talk to make that journey as simple and stress-free as possible. I'll get a little bit more into like the nuts and bolts, the specifics of what Toronto Home Energy Network does in my presentation, but without further ramping or vamping here, I'll just ask Kasper to share his screen and we'll get into his presentation.
All right. Now do I remember how to share my screen?
Thanks for engaging in the chat, guys. Much appreciated. Yes, the webinar
Oh,
link, the recording link is going to be sent out to everybody that registered for this webinar tomorrow, probably a little after lunch. So you'll have that to look forward to.
all right. Hopefully everybody's seeing the presentation and on some other screen. All
Yeah,
right.
that's right. Yeah.
All right. So I prepared. Happy to be here, everyone. I'm glad we've got so many people coming out for this as well, and put together this brief presentation. I was only given 20 minutes, but let's see if we can make the most of it. And it's going to be focused on electric domestic hot water heating and just looking at options for your home. Nathan didn't mention, but if you have any questions, put them in the chat because I cannot see them. So we'll get to them in the Q&A portion once our presentations are done. So Nathan already did a bit of an introduction about myself, so I'm not going to spend too much time here, but just want to say I've really been driven by an interest in like doing home retrofits, improving homes, and I just feel it's like one of the ways that I can contribute to helping address climate change by helping other people make choices about their home that will have a positive impact. And it's been good working with Windfall. We're a non-for-profit out of Aurora, or we work really all at GTA, but mainly Peel, York, and Durham. And so I'm really involved with doing EnerGuide evaluations, and that's sort of how I started there. While preparing this presentation, this was sort of my goal that was guiding sort of the information I was putting together and what I was going to focus on. But it's really about helping you, the attendees, get a better understanding of what hot water heating is, what it is in your home, and really see if I can start getting you prepared to advocate for yourself, because I think that you're your best representative when it comes to doing any retrofits, and this is true for heat pumps, hot water, and I think attending a webinar like this is a great first step. And my presentation is kind of broken down into three main sections: water heating basics, water heating options, and then like sort of the replacement journey. And if I've got time, then I'll do some extra tidbits I think could be helpful and like are interesting to do with hot water and are worth at least mentioning briefly.
Kasper,
So
1 second. We're adding some people. If you could bring the mic a little closer to your face, then that
yeah,
would be
is
great.
this better?
Yeah, I think that's a little better.
All right. Well, let me know. Let me know.
Okay, I'll jump in. I gotta jump in. Yeah.
Uh, so water heating basics. I'm going to start. I wanted to start here, right? It was just looking at, what, I could adjust something else. I don't know if I can.
It sounded a lot better. That
Yeah. Okay.
moving the mic
Might
was
be
what
that
I
I'm
needed to do.
set. Okay. If this is good, we're going to keep
Yeah,
going. So
you're
I wanted to
good.
start with looking at how much energy is it required to heat water? Because everybody kind of talks about heating water, but don't really like quantifies what it means to heat water. So I want to do that with an example here. I have a tank of water, 189 liters. We're taking water from 10 degrees Celsius to 49. So that's a 39 degrees Celsius temperature rise. And here we've got a magic constant that converts that to watt hours of energy. And so when we do the calculation, it ends up being that that works out to 8.5 kilowatt hours, or if you do an equivalent amount of natural gas, it's 0.82 meters cubed. And to give you an idea over the course of the year, I just took that number, and if I assumed if you used one tank of water, 189 liter tank of water per day, this is the amount of energy you would need to heat that water. And with the one caveat, you can't use this for cost because we have to look at the efficiency of the equipment. So jumping a little bit ahead, but I wanted to, since I brought it up, I did a little cost comparison chart. This is just operating costs of a few different types of water heating systems. So we got resistance, so just your standard tank, on-demand hot water, which is resistance as well, but only heats what you need, heat pump water heaters, and then comparing against a standard, if not exceptional, gas hot water tank. And this is sort of where the efficiency comes in. We got some efficiency values here. We took that amount of energy we needed from the previous slide, and a Toronto-based cost. I did my best. I came out to 16 cents per kilowatt hour for electricity and about 27 cents per meter cubed of natural gas. And when you do the calculation, here we got our cost to heat that one tank of water. And then on the far end, we have that yearly cost for that same tank of water. And I thought it was interesting to look at sort of the percent difference in the cost. And you can see fairly high differences between natural gas and electricity, largely because natural gas is cheap. It's about 80% of the cost of an equivalent kilowatt hour of electricity. And there's one clear standout in my mind, which is that heat pump water heater right here, which only 23% higher in cost. So at this point, very close over the course of a year. And that's why they are such a big deal when we talk about hot water heating. And to kind of close out this section, I think it's important to not just go like, okay, so heating water takes the energy. We need to worry about the efficiency of the piece of equipment that's heating the water. Well, we also need to understand how much water do we actually use, because that's that last component, right? I assumed 189 liters, but maybe it's more, maybe it's less. And so I pulled a few examples here just to kind of illustrate that how much hot water certain things use. So like for example, a shower, 2 gallons per minute, a very typical shower head. If you shower for 10 minutes continuously, that's 58.5 liters. About twice as much as a high efficiency laundry machine running like a hot cycle, not like a medium, like a hot, like a warm, not a hot, there's different temperatures, depends, but let's say hot, 25 liters, right? Older units will be much worse. So, a reason to swap out to something a little bit newer. Your tub, depending on how big it is, how much you fill it, dishwasher, 15 liters. But if you can survey your household and go like, okay, well, I shower twice a day. Let's say it's Sunday, you took a bath, you ran a laundry in the dishwasher. Well, that's 231 liters on that day. And then you could do, okay, 231 liters, I paid this much, and do the math on like your cost for that day for hot water. And this becomes very important once you start looking at different heating equipment, because they will tell you how much water they can put out in a given amount of time, and this will factor in, especially if some of these uses are simultaneous, which is something you want to look at as well. I highly encourage you to look at your own habits and try to kind of get a map together, gauge, like how often do you shower, how many people in the home, is it simultaneous, not simultaneous, start mapping out your hot water use, try to get an idea of where you're at. And if you don't want to do that, you can use an assumption of 275 liters per person per day, which is more than my family uses, so I don't know. And then you can assume 40% is of that water use is hot water use. And then that could be your starting point, and you can work from there. So what can you actually use to heat water, right? I've mentioned three, and I think these are the main three options you'll really be dealing with, which is, again, your resistive tank looks a bit like this, your on-demand tankless, look a little box on the wall, and then the star of today's show, the heat pump water heater on the far right there. There are two what do you call them, mentions that didn't put a picture up, so I don't think that, like, they're not that common, but we got split heat pump style water heaters where the condenser is outside. There's an outdoor unit essentially doing the same job, so it's like a house heat pump, but it's putting all that energy into the tank of water. And then there are solar hot water systems, which are niche solutions, but they might fit your project. So it's always worth considering solar hot water. But if these are the main three that I think you'll mainly deal with if you talk to like a typical contractor and stuff like that. I wanted to take a moment here to do like just a brief look at tank versus tankless, because I think this comes up a lot, especially with natural gas. You talk to anyone about natural gas water heating, it's, oh, go tankless, right? Tankless, 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 it's the best, blah, blah, blah. It, it's good, it's got benefits, but I think you got to look at it and understand how one works and how the other works, and then just make a choice that makes sense for you. A tank will hold water at a certain set point for until you need to use it, right? So you could draw from it simultaneously and it will provide hot water provided it still has water to give. So as long as you don't run it dry, it will provide simultaneous draws, no problem. And the cost you pay essentially is standby losses. That tank is standing in the basement, wherever it happened to be, crawl space, attic. I'm hoping not in the attic, but wherever it's standing, it's losing a bit of heat because you've got hot water inside, cooler outside. It will lose a bit of energy. That's standby losses. The on-demand tankless units don't have standby losses because they don't actually hold any water. They just heat water as you're using it. And so they're limited by the throughput through the unit. And it's usually given in like gallons per minute, something like that, right? So I think the best example is like if you're limited to 3 gallons per minute and you try to do 2 showers and they're each drawing 2 gallons per minute of hot water, you might run into a problem. And so your limitation is that simultaneous draw. Uh, but again, you save a lot of space because there's no tank standing around anymore, and you're avoiding those standby losses. And that's why on the gas side, they're more efficient because again, those standby losses can be pretty big. Uh, and I say in terms of like tankless options, unfortunately, there's not a ton on the electric side. It's really just these tankless like water heaters. That being said, there is a bit of tech that I've heard about. I've seen them advertised and they exist as a product you can buy. And these are solid phase changing thermal storage batteries. The idea is it's got a material in there that can store a lot of heat. So any excess like energy or heat you can put into this. It's like a thermal battery, and you pass the water through it to heat the water. So it's kind of like a best of both worlds. Small form factor, has like a tank sort of behavior, but it's on demand. So I got the example here got Thermino. If you're interested, you can follow the link. I think it's super cool, but you'll be a front runner if you put one of these in. And I would love to hear about how it works out for you. So look, considering your options, I put together this chart looking at a few factors I think are important when you're looking at uh, like hot water options, right? We got our efficiency, the upfront cost to install it, the operating cost, so the ongoing cost for the equipment, how much maintenance can you expect from each, and like I like to look at the complexity of the system and that it ties with maintenance to give you an idea of the longevity. The more maintenance you have to do and the more complex a system, tends to have a shorter lifespan by its nature. So if we look at something like resistance, and I think from the chart, like these are the standouts, right? The resistance and heat pump water heaters will be your two like core options. The resistance benefits mainly from the fact that it's cheap. These purchase prices here that I got listed, these are from Home Depot. Highly recommend using it as a reference just to get a gauge for when you're getting quoted. If you're getting quoted more than Home Depot, yeah, find a different contractor. You can buy it yourself at that point. But yeah, this to give you a rough cost. And like resistance water heaters are pretty dirt cheap. Um, and that's their big benefit alongside being super simple. And some of the higher end models have like really good longevity. On the other hand, heat pump water heaters are the standouts in that, again, if you look at the efficiency here, which is given in a uniform energy factor, these exceed one, like 100% exceed 100% efficiency, which is that huge. That's that big advantage there, which then drives this really low operating cost on a day-to-day basis with a little bit more maintenance complexity because you've attached a heat pump to your hot water heater. So it kind of has that going along with it. Mentioning the uniform energy factor, like it's probably the most common metric you'll see for efficiency. And to think of it simply, it's the amount of usable hot water you're getting over the amount of energy you put in to get that water. And that's why you see every other version of hot water heating below one. That's gas and electric, both are all below one, except for that heat pump, because again, we can leverage that refrigerant cycle to get more output than input for these units. And the UEF will be given, when you see them listed, they'll mention a bin, like a capacity, and you want to compare the same capacity. So if you're looking at a high capacity, you want to compare against a high capacity, otherwise the metrics don't make sense. Like medium 3.25 is not the same thing as a high 3.25. And whole home systems will be either in the medium or high category. generally, based off like number of people and stuff like that. So and then you'll also see these on the EnerGuide label or the Energy Guide label. I know they sound the same. The Energy Guide is the American one. EnerGuide is the Canadian one. Uh, they're both measures of labels for efficiency. Uh, just depends on what you're looking at. So like the one on the left is gonna be more for like more sophisticated systems. Like this is a heat pump water heater. And you'll see again that the bins down here, and something called first hour rating. I'll get into that for a sec. And on the enter guide side, we've got something here, and this is the other metric of efficiency: standby losses. Like I mentioned, tanks of water will lose energy, and the intent here is that this is mainly used really just with electric tanks because they essentially convert all energy into hot water. Their only losses are standby losses. And so you can go, if you look at the standby loss of a given tank, the lower it is, the better, and the more efficient the unit. And then going back to that first hour rating, because this is where it gets, I think this is one of the more important metrics to look at when you're looking at equipment, and you really want to understand this, is the capacity of the tank is not necessarily what it can provide. So like this particular label is for a 65-gallon tank, but you'll notice it can provide 75 gallons in that first hour of use. And so as you use water, it will heat water coming in, and that helps buffer its capacity and raises it a little bit. And you want to make sure that after you've done your survey of your water use, that that tank can provide your highest water use day, right? And that's sort of where that first hour rating comes in and why you want to make sure you look at that. So looking a little bit closer at heat pump water heaters, this is a schematic of how they work. But as I mentioned, you got a heat pump, basically a monoblock heat pump up top. Air goes across the evaporator core, oil grabs the heat, brings it down, adds it to the water, and then the cold refrigerant comes back to go through the cycle again. Yes, they do take heat from the space, meaning the output is going to be cool air. It does do cooling. It's like a little window shaker sitting on top of your hot water tank. Uh, Now, that's not their only way of heating water. And almost all, I don't know if I don't want to say all, but almost all of them, and the reason they're called hybrid, sometimes hear them called hybrid water heaters, is because they'll have resistive coils as well. And so they can either work together or separately in different modes to help recover, like, heat your water as needed. Some considerations to keep in mind: because they need airflow, there's a certain amount of space that they need to be in, and the smaller the space, the requirements get a little stricter about providing airflow. Manufacturers provide all that information. You've got to look at that and make sure it's being followed for it to work properly and get the life it deserves. Because it's cooling, consider the impact it can have on the space. Though really, this is only a concern in the winter when it's cold outside and you don't want that additional cooling. Spring, summer, and fall, we don't mind a bit of cooling and a bit of humidification, but in the winter it can be a problem, especially if like it's a living space or the basement's actively used. You can try to mitigate that with venting. Most of these heat pump water heaters can be vented either on the supply or the exhaust side. And again, you could set it up as well to swap between summer and winter. And then you want to look at the power requirements, because there are versions that are 120 volt that you can plug into an outlet, and some are 240 and might need additional electrical work to be installed. So I just wanted again to do a quick summary. Again, slides will be available, so you don't have to. I just wanted to kind of summarize all like the three main modes of electric heating and some of the benefits and downsides of each. So those are your options. Now let's look at, you're actually looking to replace your water heater, or you're thinking about replacing your water heater. I would first recommend you look at your current system. Try to get as good an understanding as you can of what's your current system that's heating water, right? What's the fuel type? What kind of water heater is it? How old is it? If you can get specs for it, even better, because that will help a lot. Is it state of repair? Is it in a good state of repair or not? Is there something wrong with it? Is it a rental? You got to figure that out before you do anything. And if it's a rental, call them up, figure out how long is the contract? Can you buy it out? What would that cost be? But if you can understand your current water use, because if you combine it with your household survey of what kind of water needs does my family have, if your current system is meeting your needs, well then, if you buy an equivalent system that's electric, you should be fairly confident that you will meet all your hot water needs, right? And so that's, again, you want to combine with that current knowledge of how you use water and look at the existing system and then go, hey, do these line up? Okay, and say you've done that, you're kind of ready. You're like, I'm going to talk to contractors now. So you reach out to a number of people, and I think this goes with any upgrades. You want to reach out to as many contractors as you can manage, get as many quotes as you can manage, because then that will allow you to compare against them. And I really recommend that once, like, hopefully they're coming to the home, right? It's not just over the phone, but that they come out and you can really talk about all that information you've gathered about your water use habits, share that with them, talk about about your needs and how you use hot water in your home. And then, given the brands they work with, ask them, like, what do they recommend? And then really they should be able to explain their reasoning, looking at things like the FRA, or again, first hour rate, recovery rates. You know, they are the professionals. They should be able to justify their choices. And it also, to me, is a green flag if they can, because it shows that they know their stuff and they care about this installation. Make sure you show them the space, discuss like installation, what are some hurdles they might expect. I would talk about service life of certain options, the maintenance requirements, what are the warranties like. Really get as much information as you can so that once you have your quotes, you can compare them and kind of dial in on what you think is the best option and who's the best contractor to go with, right? This is your way of judging them as well. It's like an interview for you of the contractors. So here I pulled a few spec sheets. I got this is for a heat pump water heater and resistor. I just wanted to get you familiar with what they look like. They look like there's a lot of information, but it's not that bad. So we got our model number here. We look at the capacity, looking at compare a few similar tanks here. So this is a heat pump water versus resistance water here. Then we got the efficiencies here. Okay, very nice. Then we got the first hour rating and recovery rating. So again, this is a measure of, so if you look at the heat pump water heater, I think this is interesting. It's rated for 36, so that's actual volume in the tank, but it will provide you 60 gallons over that first hour versus this electric one, which has got 51. The heat pump water heater also recovers a little bit faster at 26 gallons per hour versus the electric one at 21. And again, once you understand your water use patterns, you can then dial in on which one of these makes the most sense for you, right? For on-demand tankless, I got an example here. It draws a lot, 113 amps. And then if you look at the zone we're in, so this is the incoming water temperature, it can do about 3 gallons per minute, and it takes 113 amps. It's a lot, and it's got an efficiency of 0.93. And so that's the thing. You get your quotes. You're comparing them. You've got the specs. I highly encourage the quotes to have model numbers and specs because it's not always easy to find. You get all that information. You find the relevant bits about efficiency and things like that, and you can compare them, and then you can make a choice based off of that. Nathan, we got time for these tidbits, or are we gonna call it here?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All
Give us
right.
the tidbits.
We'll be like 30 seconds each, hopefully.
Yeah.
An important thing with hot water is scalding. You can burn pretty quickly. There's a little chart of how quickly you can burn depending on your set point. And the reason you might want to set your set point a bit higher is because the higher you go with the set point, you can kind of boost your volume a bit. And it's the reason we go high is to kill bacteria in the water, right? So you kind of want to go high, but you want to avoid scalding. And so a simple way to do that is putting a mixing valve on your hot water system. Ideally, the contractor should be recommending these and putting them on. So another thing to check for. Some equipment has it installed, but the basic idea is that you mix your really hot water with a bit of cold water to get your desired hot water. And that prevents scalding. And that's sort of where you get that bonus capacity because, again, you're diluting your very hot water. So you're kind of like boosting its capacity. My second tidbit, and this again, if it's the right project, drain water heat recoveries are amazing ways of improving the efficiency of your hot water system. As we saw, showers take up a lot of energy, or a bulk of our hot water needs. Drain water heat recovery are these passive devices that can harvest waste heat from the drain water and preheat incoming cold water before it goes to the tank or whatever system you're using for hot water. And it can be quite significant. These have like short paybacks. They're incredible. And all you need to do is have an accessible drain stack that collects water from your showers. Well, any water, but showers are best. So if you can get to one that does your showers, you can really improve the efficiency of your hot water system. This I think comes up a lot is waiting for hot water is pretty common, especially in older homes. One way to address this is with a recirculating system with a pump. The idea being is that the reason you're waiting is that before the hot water gets from the tank to that last fixture in your home, it takes time. And so you're burning essentially all that water in between, the cold water in between. And you're wasting the water, and then you step away, and then you're wasting hot water. So the idea is that if you can bring water back from that first fixture with a pump, you can prime that loop with hot water so that you're only waiting for a little short leg to heat up. And it's not easy necessarily to do in a finished home, but if you have that opportunity, it's something worth considering. And then finally, point of use heating. So we don't talk a lot about the tankless water heaters because like electrical capacity is an issue. But there are a lot of on-demand water heaters that are a lot smaller that can do like 1 gallon, little guys that take like 20, 30 amps. That's not so hard to bring to, like, let's say a far fixture that you're not getting enough hot water at. Or let's say you're doing an addition, you don't want to run hot water out there. You can take cold water and just heat it up where you're using it. And these on-demand water heaters are exceptional for that. Highly like encourage them for like these niche applications. I think they're really good. And that's everything. That's it. 20, not bad, 24 minutes. So I'll end it here. Let me stop sharing as well.
Cool. Thank you, Sarah. Much appreciated. And I was intimidated by the spec sheet until you went through it. So I do appreciate you getting into the specifics there because they're pretty complicated. Um, I see we got some great questions in the chat. We'll save those for the Q&A and I'll give them all to Casper at the end. And I'm gonna flip over to my presentation and we'll get rolling again. All right. I'm looking okay. Nice. Great. So I call this section Hot Water Wins and Wishes. Like I kind of alluded to before, talked to different homeowners across Toronto and what went well for them and what didn't. We're trying to bring that all into this presentation. So if you'll have some takeaways from that. The thing that we heard a lot of, or that I heard a lot of, was frustration and lawsuits around rental hot water heaters. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the rental curses and what we were hearing about and how to break those curses, as well as getting into some specific homes. I saw some people were asking about um, hot water heating, and some people were asking about homes with radiators and people registered with homes with radiators. So I want to talk about that a little bit, and then some other best practices, and then we'll open it up for Q&A after that. So there's three rental curses that we pulled out, and this often happens because people usually aren't budgeting for the replacement of their hot water heater. One day it goes out, and they're staring down a few days of not being able to bathe or wash dishes properly. So a quick Google brings up a very attractive rental offer with a low upfront cost, but then things kind of spiral out of control from there. So let's get into a couple of those. So before I do, Toronto Home Energy Network, we're a nonprofit, got nothing to sell you, and we just want to make sure you got the resources that you need to make the right decision for your motivation, your goals, and your values. So that first rental curse there, we're calling unclear contract length. So we heard this come up from multiple homeowners as well as people who work in consumer protection. I think Casper talked a little bit or mentioned it a little bit in his presentation too. But the curse is essentially a zombie contract that kind of lives forever and ever. Even if the equipment that you have is running inefficiently, it's starting to maybe leak, it's starting to cost you more because it's getting old and the efficiency declines over time. But the real problem is when you sign this contract with them, they say the contract lasted for not a specific period of time, but for the lifetime of the equipment. If you can tell from my tone, that's intentionally ambiguous so that their tech can come in and say, well, it's working well enough. You don't really qualify for a replacement, even if it's just limping along, right? So this is not a situation you want to find yourself in. So the way to break that curse, set a length of time up front. 10 or 15 years is the max. Really, 15 years is about the time that appliances are going to last. And that's usually brought up as 180 months because, again, they like to present something that looks bigger and longer and more valuable. So they usually put it in months. So make sure that you're not getting into one of these zombie contracts. The second one, and I'm not trying to be condescending, but door-to-door sales, we know they're not great, and you shouldn't be doing door-to-door sales. We usually understand that, but I bring them up because one, they use rebates as a hook and incentive programs to say, oh, our customers get $500 off a heat pump water heater, for example. That is true, but there's many, many contractors that can make the same claim. And the way they frame it makes it seem like you have to work with them. That's an exclusive offer that they have, which is not really the case. And I bring it up as well because there's been so many high pressure scams with hot water heating and HVAC that Ontario has had to pass specific laws acknowledging them because it was getting so out of control. So that's why I've given this a slide. So the curse, you sign this door-to-door contract, and a day or two later, you really regret it because it was made under pressure. And you get the long terms and massive cancellation penalties that are baked into these contracts. So when you try to get out of them, they're like, oh, no problem, that'll cost you $3,000, which may be double the cost of buying the water heater outright. So really not a great situation, and people have been really burned by these contracts, so much so that there's a new law in Ontario, it's not been on the books that long, that any door-to-door contract in HVAC and rentals and appliances can be canceled within 10 days without penalty for any reason. So this is just a nice little consumer protection thing that's out there. That's good for you to know about if you're in the situation or you hear about a neighbor that gets pressured into something that they regret from a door-to-door sale. And I'll point out that Consumer Protection Ontario has a helpline, and there's also 30-minute free consultations with paralegals if you find yourself in one of these cursed contracts, so they can help you understand your options and what your rights are in that situation. So the last rental curse, and then I'll dive into some more tidbits about hot water heating in people's homes. So the last one is payment hikes throughout or hidden payment hikes. Now, we're Canadians, we have our telecoms duopoly. We're probably all familiar with the feeling of suddenly a bill is much higher, and we only found out about it because we're checking our credit card statements that month by chance, right? So the curse with this one is just paying way more over the lifetime of the contract than you would have if you had just bought the appliance outright or if you had the budget in place to do that, right? So we're talking double or triple, quadruple the cost of buying this equipment up front drawn out over that 10 or 15-year contract. So definitely not that's a predatory situation to be in. It's exploitative. So how it works, you get that low payments up front, but then they jump afterwards. So the key there is just making sure that the payments aren't going to shift over time, or that if they are, it's labeled and is transparent. And you can ask that salesperson to give you the total cost of that rental ownership over the entire length of the contract. That's not something that's rude to ask. If they want your business, they should be able to demonstrate that for you. Okay, so this next one is going to be mostly aimed at people that have radiators in their homes. So that's a significant portion of especially downtown Toronto homes. So I wanted to talk about that real quick, and then I'll zoom out again to more general things. So if you don't have radiators, apologies. But if you do, lean in for a second. So what I have some photos up here of a heat pump on the left side. Then on the right side is just a hot water tank that it's feeding into. So this person has a heat pump that supplies the hot water for their radiators that keeps them warm through the winter, as well as their showering and their dishes. So it's a one integrated system doing all of the hot water heating and the space heating in their home. So that's a really interesting option that you have to kind of combine these systems together. But one of the issues, and I think Casper was already kind of mentioning this, is there's some high draw systems, like taking a bath or running multiple showers at the same time, that can go over the capacity of what the system has. And the problem with integrating all this, if you go over the capacity, then your radiators are going to cool down and your actual house might drop in temperature because the heat pump is struggling to keep up with that. So the way this particular homeowner solved this, which I wanted to share with you, which was one of those last pieces that Casper mentioned, was they put a small in-demand hot water heater along the way. So if they know they're going to be running a bath, they can just turn on this on-demand hot water heater and it'll supply the hot water for the bath. And you could also do this if you want to just, hot water for your kettle or something like that. So they won't go over the capacity of their system and make themselves chilly because they're running a bath and taking water away from their radiators. If you really want to get into the weeds of air to water heat pumps and heat pumps for homes with radiators, we did a webinar on this in November. So check out our YouTube page on that if you happen to have radiators in your home there. So the next one I'm going to talk about, Casper mentioned it. This is the rooftop solar water heating, and it can fit into your home picture. I chatted with someone that did have a rooftop solar water heating system, and they pointed out an interesting disconnect that I hadn't really thought about before. This isn't to say that they don't work for your project, but it's a piece of advice that he wanted me to share with you guys. It's just that you get the hottest water in the summer when the days are long and the sun is beating down on it. But for him, that's when he wasn't drawing as much hot water for showers, and he was actually, decreasing the water temperature of his showers at that time. So in the summer, he had a overcapacity of water from his rooftop solar system. But in the winter, sun's lower, outside air is colder, it's not producing as much hot water. That's when he wanted the water to be really hot, and the system was struggling to keep up with that. So for him, he pointed out this disconnect from his needs. Again, for your project, you might have different needs and wants, but at least for him, he wanted me to pass that along to you guys. This next one is more general, talking about anybody thinking about replacing their system. So one of those is if you're in a renovation situation. So we had a case study and interview with someone named Debbie who did a big whole home renovation to add an apartment for her son and his partner, and they moved in upstairs with their young kid. And I'll just quote directly from the case study because she had a big speed bump in her installation, which was she got very excited about a particular in-demand hot water system, had done all the thinking about it, had figured out how it was going to fit into her home. She had fallen in love with the idea of this on-demand hot water system. Then she started talking to her contractors, and all the plumbing had already been done, and they couldn't fit it in where it needed to go, and it didn't work with her current system. So this is just a word of advice that fits with this particular thing to make sure you're talking to your contractor about what works with your house and your current plumbing, which also connects with heat pump water heaters and talking to different people, especially in downtown Toronto, where some of the basements are shorter and the mechanical rooms can be smaller. Heat pump water heaters are taller than resistance water heaters, the standard electric water heaters that you're going to see out there. So we've had people again do all this research and find their perfect heat pump water heater that matched all their specs and was the right price, only to find that it didn't fit in the basement. So this is one of the specs that they didn't check. So making sure when you're starting that conversation with contractors that you know what your space is. Heat pump water heaters need to draw air from around them to heat up the water. So if it's in a tiny closet, that doesn't really work as well because it's cut off from the air supply around it and can cause some issues that way. The last thing I'll mention about, making sure you're planning in advance and thinking about things. Casper mentioned that on-demand hot water systems draw a lot of electrical power. I just want to zoom in on that because it's a roadblock we've heard from other Torontonians as well. Basically, they draw a lot, they're able to heat water very quickly, which means they're drawing a lot of power. They're very powerful at once. But some systems, like Casper was saying, they need 150 amps of power. For context, most single-family homes in Toronto, if they haven't been majorly renovated, only have 100 amps of total capacity, electrical capacity in their home. So just that single appliance is 50% more than the capacity that they have to turn on their lights, to run all their appliances, right? So what people end up doing is they can improve the electrical service. They go from a 100 amp panel to a 200 amp panel. That's a big home improvement project. There's some costs associated with that. But when you're thinking about in-demand hot water and looking at that, make sure you're thinking about the electrical capacity of your home because they're very power-hungry systems. So that little bit about talking to contractors is a bit of a segue into an article that we wrote that I think would be useful for you guys as you're thinking about replacing an old system with an electric one. And that's helping you find contractors who care. People that put your needs first and are actually, thinking about you not just as a piggy bank, but as someone who has to live in this home and be comfortable and have hot water when they expect it. So an article we put together here is just very focused on making finding good contractors as easy as possible, especially in this online environment where there's a lot of reviews that can be faked, that can be spoofed, and that's actually can make it difficult to know if the reviews you're reading about a contractor online are legitimate or sponsored or they've been bought and paid for, right? So that can be a big challenge with finding right contractors. So I'd encourage you to check out thenetwork.to/contractors. We wrote an article on this, and we have a one-call contractor plan to help you find contractors who care a little bit faster. And a big boost or a big plus of that is going that way, you can start to get prices before you call installers, which puts you ahead of homeowners that are just winging it and hoping for the best there. So I'd recommend you guys checking out that. And before I dive into the next slides, which is just a little bit of describing what Toronto Home Energy Network does, I'm going to throw up a quick poll here. The poll is just asking, there's been a lot of information here. Uh, what do you feel stuck on? Do you have your questions answered? What's really top of mind right now? And there's an email field just below that. That's not you opting into marketing when you're filling that out. That's just so that I know that I can reach out to you if there's a particular resource or introduction that I can make to make this journey towards a more sustainable home easier for you. So that poll is just popped up there. And I'll just go through my last couple slides and then we'll end the recording and open it up to Q&A. Great. So the bread and butter of what we do here at Toronto Home Energy Network is set up these partner communities around the city. The idea is that Toronto homeowners can have neighbor to neighbor support wherever they live. They can have people that have already gone ahead and got the heat pump water heater in their neighborhood, and you can ask them question to question or ask them questions in a trusted, non-salesy environment there. So we have these groups in the East End, one uptown, a couple downtown, and some in Etobicoke as well. So we have a whole page on that on our website, and I encourage you guys to check it out if we overlap with some support. And we also share events that they're doing on our newsletter as well. So the main things that partner communities do is actually throw these parties. So heat pump parties or energy audit parties or even hot water parties. We haven't had one of those yet, but usually you have homeowners that have done a couple different upgrades to their homes. They invite everyone over and they talk about what it cost them, who they used, have their bills changed, and you do a little tour around. There's sometimes a speaker like Kasper who has a little bit more of a technical background, but isn't there to sell anything. There's no sales, there's no quotas, the hosts don't get kickbacks. It's just pure information, neighbor to neighbor exchange. And the network.to/newsletter is where we share the events that are going on there, and sometimes on our website as well, but the newsletter is definitely the best way to find that. Then just two more things and we'll open up the Q&A, which is our online support. So in the case where you don't have that neighbor to neighbor partner community, there's a great group online called the Home Retrofit Forum that was started by one of our volunteers. This is just full of like firsthand home electrification experience. A lot of nerds in this group who are very happy to answer your questions. It's very well moderated. Most questions get 8, 10, 15 really helpful replies on them. So if you're on Facebook and you're going through your project and you hit a tricky speed bump, definitely keep the home retrofit forum in mind. Our big thing is heat pumps. So if you're thinking about your space heating as well as your domestic hot water, I definitely recommend checking out the first heat pump guidebook. And I'll leave it at that, and we'll open it up to the Q&A. So I'll say thank you so much again for Casper joining us tonight, and for all of you guys joining us tonight as well. I'm going to end the recording here, and then we'll open it up for Q&A.